Lately, we are getting a lot of remasters and re-releases, maybe way too many of them. But don't get the wrong idea, the fact that we can take a controller and start playing is great. The problem starts when there are too many remasters to choose from. Remasters' accuracy, extras, and quality of life improvements are all important, but so is the game selection. I call it the bad, the good, and the ugly. Before we get started, let's set a few things aside. I'm not talking about the truly great remasters. Collections like Tomb Raider 1 to 3 Remastered, the LucasArts Adventures,
Take all the world.
Or the recent Doom releases have already proven that older games can be brought back the right way. I'm also not talking about digital-only releases that cost $10 or less, such as Arcade Archives titles or legacy PlayStation games on PSN. Those are cheap, easy to access, and usually offer decent value for the money. What I want to talk about are the collections that fall somewhere in between. With that out of the way, let's start with the bad ones. We all remember Ren and Stimpy, right?
Don't whiz on the electric fence.
Don't whiz on
The electric fence.
You set up the board, and I'll go plug
I
in
still
the
don't
fence.
understand how we were allowed to watch that thing. So anyway, Limited Run Games released a collection of Ren and Stimpy games from the 8-bit and 16-bit era. If you wanted the physical deluxe edition with all the shiny replicas, including a CD if you can still find something to play it on, you had to fork over $109.99, and then wait a year for it to arrive. And if Limited Run Games' reputation is anything to go by, you'd probably spend that year crossing your fingers. But let's focus on the games themselves, shall we? I originally wanted to just show the trailer because you really don't need to see much more to understand how bad these games are, and I still somewhat trust my memory. But I decided to give the collection a spin, and oh boy, those games are bad. Let's take Space Cadet Adventure for the Game Boy. After a long and not particularly funny dialogue sequence, you're supposed to leave the ship. For some reason, the loud sound coming from the speakers can actually hurt you on your own ship. Maybe invest in some thick ear cushions? Also, I hate this floaty jump, but then again, who doesn't? About 5 minutes into the level, I ran into this wall. I had no idea how to get past it, and to be honest, by then I just didn't care anymore. The second game I tried was Fire Dogs for the Super Nintendo. It's based on the episode where Ren and Stimpy disguise themselves as Dalmatians to join the fire department. In the game, you're supposed to follow the chief's orders by collecting various items while keeping your disguise intact. In practice, that mostly means staying away from sprinklers. The problem is that you're on a timer, and the chief can smack you as well. Since he's about as tall as an entire floor, getting hit usually means losing a life. You can repaint yourself, but I didn't even realize paint was something I was supposed to pick up. So I just kept losing lives over and over again. Maybe I should have read the manual first. Then again, it didn't exactly feel like I was missing out on a hidden masterpiece. The rest of the games aren't much better. Time Warp is probably the best one in the collection. It's a strange kind of beat 'em up, where even wooden fences can hurt you. The sprites aren't as oversized as they are in some of the other games, but there are still occasional slowdowns. I don't think they're caused by emulation, but who knows. While looking up the collection on Wikipedia, I also noticed that none of the Sega versions are included. So when you see 16-bit Super in the title, what it really means is the Super Nintendo versions, not the Game Boy or NES versions. That also explains why all the Nintendo trademarks were removed from the cover art extras, even on the Switch release. For the Clint Eastwood role, I'll use Sin Reloaded. Night Dive Studios are well known for their FPS remasters and enhanced ports. I could have picked almost anything from their catalog, but I decided to go with Sin. Sin is a first-person shooter from 1998. It never reached the same level of success as Quake 2 or Half-Life, but it built up a loyal cult following over the years. From the time I spent with the demo, it feels like exactly the kind of mindless fun I remember. There's a good variety of weapons, plenty of explosions, and enemies with far more firepower than common sense. But that's part of the charm. Too bad there are still those moments when you're not quite sure what you're supposed to do next, although the Reloaded version does provide a few helpful hints along the way. There's also an old versus new graphics mode. Not that there's a huge difference between the two, but it's still a nice touch. Now I want to talk about the ugly ones. Good examples are the 2 Fighting Force games and the 2 Fear Effect games. What you basically get are the original PS1 releases with a simple CRT filter and a handful of very minor upgrades, such as analog stick support, or a widescreen mode that simply zooms the image and makes everything look washed out. Sometimes it's so ridiculous that you wouldn't even know those extras are there. The repackaged version doesn't even have its own title screen. And if you're wondering, yes, there's a physical edition. It costs more than 3 times as much as the digital version, and that's without Fear Effect 2 included. Which is a shame, because Fear Effect actually deserves better than this. Before I wrap up, I want to talk about the ones that fall somewhere in between. After all, not everything is black and white. Gex Trilogy is a great example. I really wanted to put it in the good category, but it ended up being a bit of a disappointment. The main menu looks promising. There's a nice selection of extras, including new artwork and some cool TV commercials. My only complaint here is the cover art yet again. I'm playing this on a PlayStation system, and yet the original PS1 cover looks like somebody used it as a dartboard. I can't complain too much about the original Gex. It looked great for its time, but as a platformer, it was never really in the same league as Mario or Sonic when it came to level design and gameplay mechanics.
Pulse racing, heart pounding. Where's the John?
The other 2 games, however, are still quite entertaining, even by today's standards. The problem is that the moment you start playing them, it becomes obvious that you're essentially getting the PS1 versions with very few improvements. To be fair, the Carbon engine is designed to stay as close to the original hardware as possible. The problem is that it also keeps many of the original PlayStation quirks. The moment you start moving around, it's very easy to spot the classic texture wobble and shaky polygons. Some people might see that as authenticity. Personally, when a collection promises improved resolution, I expect a little more than that. Maybe that same focus on accuracy is also the reason the games are still locked to 30 frames per second. Gex 3 Deep Cover Gecko is advertised as having improved performance, but as far as I can tell, that mostly means the original PS1 version wasn't always stable. I'm not an emulation expert, but I can't help wondering if it would have been better to include the PC version of Gex 2 as an option. That's the version I grew up with. Unfortunately, Gex 3 never made it to PC. So, what do you think? Are we getting too many remasters these days, or am I just getting old? Let me know in the comments. See you next time.